Hi there, welcome back. In this video, we're going to have a discussion on IELTS Writing Task 2 question, that is essay question from the most recent IELTS exam held on 17th May 2025. Let's get started. You can see on the screen the question. Okay, first let's read the instruction. Most of you would be familiar, like if you're somebody who is already practicing IELTS, you would be knowing it, but still let's go over it. You should spend 40 minutes on this task. You know it. The total writing time is 1 hour, and you should be spending at least 40 minutes for writing task 2, because you have to write writing task 2 in at least 250 words when compared to task 1, wherein you have to write in at least 150 words. Okay, so you have to spend at least 40 minutes on writing task 2. Now you have the question inside the box, and one more instruction given here. Okay, let's look at the question. Now, one mistake that students tend to make is they'll just skim through the question and have an idea, misconception I would say, about the question, and then immediately get started with their writing. Now, for instance, in this question, mostly the chances are that their focus will go on words like, okay, the first thing that they would be looking is what essay type it is. Immediately they say this, outweigh, and they decide that, okay, it's an outweigh type of question. Now, each one of you would be having your own preferences when it comes to essay types, like you would be confident with certain essay types. If it is so-and-so essay type, I would be able to generate more ideas, or I would be able to structure it in a better way. So the first thing that you look for would be what essay type it is. And okay, you see it's an outweigh type of question. You understand it's an outweigh type of question. And then they quickly read through the question and focus on words like, okay, living in small houses rather than large houses with big gardens. So that is the idea that most of the candidates make. Small houses, big houses, and okay, outweigh type of question. Immediately they start writing the advantages and disadvantages. This is more advantages, or this is more disadvantages. Now that is the biggest mistake that candidates make when it comes to writing task 2 especially. That is not understanding the question in its right meaning. So what you need to do initially is that you need to understand the question thoroughly. How do you do that? Not by just reading it once. At least you have to read the task prompt twice, at least twice, to understand the question in the right way. So once again, let me reinforce that the first step when it comes to writing task 2 is you have to read the task prompt twice or thrice and get the complete picture of the question. Okay, so now let's dissect the question. These are the 3 bits. Now you can see the 3 bits which comes under the task prompt. Now the first part, this, we call it as the statement part. Okay. Now all your essay questions will be having a statement part. Statement part is nothing but a declarative sentence. It can be an opinion, it can be a fact, it can be an idea. Now they have put in an idea here. What is the idea that they have made? In cities, people are living in small houses rather than in large houses with big gardens. Now why I said is that like students generally get fixated with a few ideas, specific words. For instance, they might set their focus on small houses rather than large houses. So it's not that. Every word has its significance, and you have to read it thoroughly to understand the question to its entirety. Now here they have very specifically mentioned in cities. So the question is from the backdrop of cities. So in cities, what is mentioned? People are living in small houses. Okay, in cities, people are living in small houses rather than, okay, instead of living in large houses with big gardens. So they have, in the question, they have put in a scenario from cities, representing cities. What is happening in cities as of now is people tend to live in small houses more than large or big houses with big gardens. That is the statement. So this is the statement. We have understood the statement. Read it twice or thrice and then understand what exactly they are trying to communicate through the statement. So here it is very clear that it is being said that nowadays in cities, people prefer to live in small houses rather than large houses with huge gardens. Okay, that is the statement. Now, what is the question? What are we supposed to do with that statement? You can see two questions here. The first is, why is this? Which means that the first thing that they have asked for is the reason for this trend. That is, why do people opt to live in small houses rather than big houses? Now, students usually tend to miss out this part. That's what I have said initially. The initial focus will go on this outweigh part. No, that is another part of the question. Before that, there is another question, that is, why is this? What is the reason for this shift or change? Now, that is the first thing, the reason. Then there is another part to the question, that is, do the advantages outweigh the disadvantages? So, whether living in small houses when compared to big houses, does it have more advantages or does it have more disadvantages? That is the second part that you need to address in your essay, which means that there are two parts. That task 1, I would say that task part 1 and task part 2 that you need to address in your essay. You have to clearly identify that. It's not a purely advantage outweigh disadvantage question. Instead, what it is a two-part question. It is a two-part question where you have to answer these two parts, T1 and T2. In T1, you have to give the reasons why people live in small houses these days when compared in cities specifically, okay? And in part 2, you have to say that whether this trend is more advantageous or disadvantageous. So it is by clearly, dissecting the question into statement part and task parts, you will be able to identify what the essay question type is. Okay, you have decided the essay question, or you have understood the essay question type, and then accordingly you have to put in your task response. So reading the question carefully is very, very important, or it's at most essential to decide what essay type it is and how you have to place in your task response. Suppose if I develop my essay just focusing on this advantage outweigh disadvantage, then the task response will not be met completely. At the same time, if I focus only on why this trend is, then again I won't be meeting the task response. And or in some instance, like as I said initially, students might not take the trouble to understand the question completely. They just skim through the question and they might simply list out the advantage and disadvantage of this small house when compared to big houses. They won't even consider this outweigh part sometimes, some students, which means that your essay has completely gone off topic. So the first step is understand the task. How to understand the task? By careful reading. Okay. Now we have carefully read, we have understood the statement, we have understood the task, and we have understood how our essay should be, how our response should be. Now, since this being a two-part question, let's see how our essay can be structured. Now, whatever the essay type is, the general structure of the essay is, it will have an introduction, it will have body paragraphs, and then a conclusion. Now, generally we have two body paragraphs, body paragraph 1 and body paragraph 2. And in some situations, it is said that you can have a body paragraph 3 also. Now, let's see how this essay will look like, the structure of this essay will look like. First, of course, you have the introduction. Now, what is introduction? Introduction should contain, I've written general statement here. Let me keep that aside. That's why I have put it inside brackets. You need to have a background statement, and then you need to have the task response, which we call it as the thesis. Okay. Now, background statement is nothing but paraphrasing of the statement of the given question. Okay. So, the background statement, how we write is by paraphrasing the given statement. Now, what do you mean by paraphrasing? Paraphrasing simply means that you are rewriting that statement in your own way, keeping the meaning intact but not copying the same words as in the question. That is what you mean by paraphrasing. You can rearrange the order of the words, you can write synonyms. Through all those, you are paraphrasing the given statement. Now, the first part of your introduction should be that background statement. Then you have this thesis statement, which is nothing but the task response. So here you have two tasks or two parts to the task. First one is we have to identify what is the reason why people tend to live in small houses. So what you have to do is you have to do brainstorming and find out at least two different reasons why this is happening. So you would be identifying reason 1, reason 2. Okay, that you have identified, and then you have to decide whether this trend, according to me or according to my or in my perspective, whether that is more advantageous or disadvantageous. So for that also what you have to do is you can list out the advantages and disadvantages. Okay, you would be gathering points under each of this, and then you decide whether should I go for advantages more or disadvantages more. Now, if I have chosen that it is advantageous, generally overall it is advantageous, even though there are drawbacks, it has more of benefits, then I would be saying it is advantages outweigh disadvantages. But if I am of the opinion that the disadvantages or demerits are more, then my essay would be structured in such a way that I would be presenting it as disadvantages outweigh advantages. Now, in this case, let me assume that I'm going for advantages outweigh disadvantages. Then I should be writing more of advantages in my essay and less of disadvantages. Generally, it is said that we should be following the ratio 1:3. So whichever you are supporting, whichever side you're supporting, you have to provide more points of that aspect. If I'm supporting advantages, I should present more advantages, but if I'm supporting disadvantages, I should put in more of drawbacks or limitations. Okay, now assume that here I'm going to go for advantage outweigh disadvantage. Then in that case, what I should be doing, I should at least find out one disadvantage plus 3 or 2 advantages. Why I said 3 or 2 is because generally it is 1:3. So generally we say that 1 disadvantage and 3 advantages, or 1 advantage and 3 disadvantages. But here why I have said is 2 is because now in the first when we are giving response to the first part of the task, that is why is this trend, why people live in small houses when compared to big houses, there itself when you bring up points to give answer to that question, you would have mentioned advantages. It is because of the advantages people choose to live in small houses. So there itself you would have mentioned 2 points. Now again it should not be a repetition. So 2 advantages would be enough. The rest of the advantages would have already come here as the reason, as the answer to the first part of the question. Okay, I hope that is clear. Now, so the introduction you will be constructing first by paraphrasing the given statement. That is, in cities people are living in small houses rather than in large houses. Word by word you can find synonyms. For instance, for cities you can think of something like urban areas or towns. People are living, people residing, or you can say residents. Small houses, maybe you can say compact living areas, or large houses, big houses, you can say big gardens, you can think of as extensive or expansive gardens. So, and one more thing, it's not necessary that for every word in the statement you have to find a synonym. No, it's not necessary. Some words, if you take it from the question or from the statement as such, that is okay. Even if you change the form of the word, that would be enough. You need not find an entirely new word to show off your language skill. Okay, so to write the introduction, the first step is you have to paraphrase the given statement. Then you have to put in your task response, that is the thesis. So here in this specific question, the task response will include 2 parts. One is giving response to what is the reason for this trend, and the second one is you have to make it clear what your opinion is, whether it is advantageous. Generally this trend is more advantageous or more disadvantageous. Once we have decided on the introduction, the next part is body paragraph 1. So what we'll write in body paragraph 1? In body paragraph 1, we should be writing the answer to the first part of question. So we'll be giving response to T1. T1 response we'll be putting it in body paragraph 1. We will expand on this reason 1 and reason 2, which you have mentioned in the introduction. In the introduction, we would be just mentioning it as words. What is the reason? Maybe if it is convenience or cost effective. So we would be just mentioning those words in the introduction, and we would be elaborating on those ideas in body paragraph 1. And in body paragraph 2, what are you supposed to do? So which means that in the first paragraph we have addressed the first task part, the reasons. Now the second task part is do advantages outweigh disadvantages. Now advantages outweigh disadvantages means you cannot put all of that together in one paragraph. Clearly we have to show which is more. So definitely we'll need two more paragraphs. One to show the advantages and one to show the disadvantages. So in this specific essay we'll be having 3 body paragraphs. So in the second body paragraph, since we are supporting advantages are more, here we would be talking about that one disadvantage. We would be elaborating on that idea, and in this body paragraph we would be elaborating on the 2 advantages. Okay, so we have to carefully decide how many paragraphs should be there. Don't randomly go for 3 body paragraphs where it is absolutely unnecessary. But in situations like this, when you feel that you cannot accommodate your ideas in 2 body paragraphs, then go for the 3rd body paragraph. I hope it's clear why we have gone to the 3rd body paragraph. Because in the first body paragraph, you gave answer to the first part of the question, first part of the task. And in the second body paragraph, since the second part of the question is do the advantages outweigh disadvantages, we cannot express that completely in one paragraph. So you have to clearly show the difference, or to show which is outweighing the other one, you need to have 2 body paragraphs for that alone. So that's why we have the 3rd body paragraph. And then finally you have the conclusion. Conclusion is nothing but restating your opinion. I hope by now you have got an idea on how to structure the essay for this particular question. It's a 2-part question, and in 2-part, 1 part itself is another question type that we generally solve. Okay, now shall we look at a sample essay? Now here you can see the introduction. This is the introduction for our sample essay. Let's see what does it say. Before that, I have just mentioned the general statement, but I did not tell you what it is. See, it's not necessary that you need to include a general statement in the introduction. You can start off with the background statement and then go for the thesis part. General statement is something which you cannot take it from the question. You have to understand the question and you have to give a general overview about the situation. Now, for instance, you can see here, this is actually a general statement. What is mentioned here? In today's rapidly evolving and increasingly urbanized society, housing preferences are undergoing a gradual transformation. Generally, you have made a general statement about the shift in choices, housing preferences. You have not directly come to the fact that have been mentioned in the question, that is what now people prefer to live in small houses rather than big houses with huge gardens. No, you have not come into that. Before that, you have given a general statement about the shift in housing preferences. It's not very essential that you put in that general statement, but if you're somebody who has good command over the language, and if you're able to put in beautifully, of course you can include that as well. So this is how you will be writing a general statement, something related to the topic but not directly a part of the question. Okay, so here you have mentioned that like it's undergoing the housing preferences, it's undergoing a gradual transformation. Then you are getting into the background statement. What is the background statement? It's nothing but a paraphrasing of the given statement. Okay, paraphrasing of the given statement. So how has it been paraphrased? In recent years, a growing number of urban residents have begun to favor smaller homes over larger houses with expansive gardens. See, some of the words have been replaced with synonyms. For instance, instead of cities, it has been mentioned as urban. Instead of people, residents have begun to favor. They live in small houses rather than big houses. It has been put as have begun to favor smaller houses instead of smaller houses. That is also fine. Over larger houses with expansive gardens. So this is the background statement. Now you have your thesis part. This is the thesis part. And in the thesis, you have 2 parts, remember. Task response 1 and task response 2. In task response 1, you say the reasons for this change, and then in task response 2, you have to say whether the advantage outweigh the disadvantage. So the task response should be clear. The one who reads your essay should have a clear understanding on what your stance is, what side you're supporting, whether you favor it is more beneficial or whether you favor whether it has more disadvantages. So let's go through the thesis. It says that this shift is largely influenced by, which means that you are stating the reason, is largely influenced by practical considerations such as affordability and convenience. You have mentioned two reasons there, affordability and convenience. Then, although this lifestyle presents certain limitations, I believe the benefits generally outweigh the drawbacks. Very clearly you have made your opinion clear. That is, you believe that the advantages are more than the disadvantages. So this is how you have to write, or you have to develop your essay. Right from the introduction through the body paragraphs until the conclusion, your stance or your opinion should be clear. Your response to the task should be reflected throughout, right from the introduction. Don't wait for the body paragraphs to make your opinion. No, right from the introduction it should be clear. Now let's move on to the first body paragraph. This is body paragraph 1, wherein we are talking about the reason or the cause for this change. Okay. A key factor contributing to this trend is the economic advantage associated with smaller living spaces. So the first point that you have mentioned, the reason for this change is economic advantage, and you have elaborated on that idea. You can elaborate on that idea. With property prices in urban centers continuing to rise, compact homes offer a more affordable alternative for both individuals and families. Moreover, these residences typically involve lower utility expenses and minimal maintenance, leading to greater financial efficiency in the long term. So you mentioned the first point. You can mention the first point as economic advantage, and then you are expanding on that idea. So this is the, you are developing that idea. Now you have put in the second point. You should be talking about 2 points in this paragraph. In addition to economic factors, the changes in modern lifestyle also plays a significant role. The second point, what I've included, is about the changes in modern lifestyle, which is actually prompting people to go for smaller houses. Now let's see the expansion of that idea. That is the supporting sentence. Many people now prefer streamlined, low maintenance living arrangements that align with fast pace of urban life. In this context, smaller homes are more manageable and better suited to contemporary needs. So you have picked in 2 points and you have elaborated on those. You will be having, you need to have a developing sentence, that is the main idea, and you should have supporting sentence to support or justify that. Now we are moving on to the next response to our second task. Task Part 2 response. Okay. So we have already mentioned in the introduction that you think that advantages are more. So it started off by saying that however. Now why did I say however? Because in the paragraph prior to this, what did we say? We talked about the reason why people opt for smaller houses. Of course, they are talking about the advantages or benefits of smaller houses. Now in this paragraph, we are going to talk about disadvantages, because this part of the essay represents task response to advantage outweigh disadvantage. Okay, these 2 paragraphs together represent the response to advantage outweigh disadvantage question. Now we have decided advantages are more. So in the first paragraph we will be talking about the disadvantage, and this paragraph we will be talking about advantages, and advantages should be more and disadvantages should be less. So this paragraph, normally when we write advantage, disadvantage, advantage outweigh disadvantage question, the first paragraph we will not start with however, because freshly we are going to start talking about advantage or disadvantage. But in this specific question, why did I mention however here is because it is contradicting or conflicting the idea presented in the previous paragraph. Okay. However, this form of housing does present certain disadvantages. That is the topic sentence for this paragraph. Then what? Chief among these is the limitation of space. The first drawback that you have mentioned is limitation of space. both indoors and outdoors. Smaller dwelling may restrict daily activities such as entertaining guests, enjoying private leisure time, or providing adequate play areas for children. For households with multiple members, particularly families, this spatial constraint can occasionally compromise comfort and overall living quality. So we already decided that only one disadvantage is enough, because 1:3 is the ratio that we follow. So one disadvantage that we discuss about here is the space constraint. Smaller house has got its own advantages, but one disadvantage what I see is that there will be this space constraint or limitation of space. I've mentioned that point. That is my developing sentence, and I have elaborated on that using this supporting sentence. I have just supported the idea using this further explanation. Now moving on to the second part of this same idea. Here you have talked about the disadvantage. Now in this paragraph we'll be going to discuss the advantages. Despite these concerns, again there is a shift in idea. Now we are coming on to the advantages. The advantages of smaller urban houses remain substantial. So this is your topic sentence to this paragraph, which gives the reader an idea that you're going to discuss about the advantages in this paragraph. One of the most notable benefits is the convenience. So that is the first advantage that you put in, and then you're expanding on that. These homes are frequently situated in close proximity to workplaces, educational institutions, healthcare facilities, and other essential services. For instance, a city resident might be able to walk to work or school, thereby reducing commuting time and transportation expenses. So the first advantage that you put here is convenience, and then you have elaborated on it, how it is convenient, because you can access all of these facilities, basic amenities very quickly. It will be when you're living in a city, you can access all of these facilities quickly. Even though the houses are smaller, one of the reasons is for quick access to these such basic amenities. So that is the advantage. Additionally, which means that one more advantage I have brought in, urban areas often offer enhanced security. Now this is the second advantage. Now what do you mean by this enhanced security? Let's look at the explanation. The presence of surveillance systems, active neighborhood, and close-knit communities can contribute to a greater sense of safety. So since the spaces are very small, people are living in a close-knit community, like people will have or will feel a greater sense of safety. In such environment, neighbors are more likely to notice unusual activity, offering an added layer of protection. Okay, so since people are very close, people live in smaller houses, and there's a space constraint, you will have neighbors very close by, and this will actually will add on a layer of protection. Now this is the second advantage. So with that we have come to the end of these two body paragraphs, and finally we have the conclusion. Conclusion is nothing but it should be a restating of your opinion. What you have written in the introduction, you are just rewriting it in a different way. How can it be written in conclusion? While smaller urban homes may pose challenges related to limited space and privacy, the advantage they offer in terms of affordability, accessibility, and safety are considerable. Again, you are making clear that advantages are more. As cities continue to expand and population grow, this style of living may become not only more common but also a necessary adaptation to urban condition. On balance, the benefits of this housing trend appear to outweigh the disadvantages. You've made your statement or opinion once again clear in the conclusion. Hope you found this discussion helpful. If you have any doubts or any difference in opinion, please feel free to reach out to us through the comment section. We'll be back with more such videos. Stay tuned. Thank you.
MedCity International Academy. Trusted hands forever.